Hey, Augie.
Hello, Nia. How are you today?
I'm excellent because the world centers around me and
Well, of
all
course it
the
does.
things.
Yes.
I think all the things and I feel all the things. Um, but I'm trying to think outside the box in this
Oh, okay.
particular instance because I was wondering, so I know how the election affects me, sort of makes me sick to my stomach. There's a bit of nausea involved. And I'm wondering if the Supremes feel the same way, do you think? Or is what's going on with the elections and the Supremes? How will the elections affect the Supremes?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked, Nia. Now, the most obvious effect is that when a person is elected president, they get to pick whom?
Oh, Supreme Court justice. They get to pick a whole bunch of people, actually, don't they?
Yes, and
Like
in in
2,800 people or something.
in follow-up videos, we will look at some of those other appointments. But specifically in
What
regards
I
to
what I technically refer to as a wonking lot, in case you were wondering.
yeah, my technical language viewers is a whole bunch.
Right. Whole bunch.
Now, a president doesn't get to pick a justice under our current system until a justice is either impeached, not either, is impeached, the justice dies, or the justice resigns. Now, no Supreme Court justice in the history of our country heretofore has ever been impeached. So basically, a new president has to wait for a justice to either retire or die. Now,
Seems a little ghoulish.
it's quite ghoulish. And for those of us who teach judicial politics, we get
Like a bunch of
accused.
vultures just waiting around for something to die. That's
Yes.
really sad.
So, and I actually know the ages, and to the extent that they share this knowledge with us, the general health records of the current Supreme Court justices.
Oh, they're not required to share that, right?
Yes, you are correct. Unlike presidents of the United States, where there is the expectation that the president's annual physical will be shared with the general public, Supreme Court justices don't have to do that, right?
Okay.
So we have 9 current Supreme Court justices. The Chief Justice is 69. John Roberts is 69 years old. He's had a couple seizure bouts in the past. In regards to the associate justices, the other 8, Clarence Thomas is the oldest at 76. Sam Alito is 74. Sonia Sotomayor is 70. Elena Kagan is 64. Neil Gorsuch is 56. Brett Kavanaugh is 59. Coney Barrett is 52. And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is 53.
They're babies.
They're babies. All right.
I mean,
Yes,
compared to the others.
and the average tenure of Supreme Court justices in the last 100 years is they typically serve about a quarter of a century, right?
Okay.
So, you might be thinking Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, okay, are likely candidates. Sonia Sotomayor,
Yeah, she's getting
uh,
up in there.
in particular, she suffers from diabetes. She's had type 1 um, for basically her entire life. It has caused some difficulties in regards to her traveling and moving, etc. But the rest of the justices, by all accounts, are relatively healthy. Now, we know statistically most presidents will have at least one vacancy on the Supreme Court to fill, even if they serve just one term as president.
Oh, okay.
The the last
It's just the cycle of retirement and death happens to work that way.
yes, the last president who did not have a single vacancy to fill on the Supreme Court was Jimmy Carter.
Oh, it would have
Okay,
been lovely for Jimmy Carter to pick someone, but yeah.
so viewers, if you think about that, it's been over 40 years since we've had a president who did not pick a Supreme Court justice. Now,
So it's a big deal. It's important to
yes.
think about it in those terms.
So let's hypothesize in regards to what may happen depending on which candidate wins the presidential election this fall. If Vice President Harris wins, it would not surprise me if Sonia Sotomayor retired or gets pressured to do so, right?
Okay.
Because Sonia Sotomayor is viewed as a liberal justice. Supreme Court justices frequently wait for a president who they think will appoint a successor that the justice approves of before they
Right.
retire.
Is aligned with their
They're
thinking.
thinking, that's right. Okay. If Trump wins, all right, it wouldn't surprise me if Thomas or Alito retired. Right?
Really? You think Justice Thomas will retire?
No,
I think Justice Thomas will perhaps pass away
yeah,
at the bench, but I don't see him.
Yeah, but
I don't see him retiring. I could see Alito retiring.
I'm just thinking about in terms of them being comfortable with who the president is, who would be appointing their successor.
I see.
Right? Now, an intervening variable in all of this, in addition to whether or not, okay, a justice retires or dies and presents a vacancy.
Side note, you're one of the few people in the world who just drops intervening variable into a sentence as if.
Yes, I'm sorry, viewers, listeners. Okay. I am a political scientist. I use words like intervening variables, right? In other words, what could really mess things up, okay, no matter who's elected president, is what happens with the Senate. That's the other thing that voters need to pay attention to, because in regards to presidents making appointments to the federal judiciary or the bureaucracy, if the Senate is of the same party as the president, then the president will typically
smooth sailing.
Carte blanche.
More or less smooth sailing. I mean, unless they pick someone so horrible that no one can support that person, which they're not going to do, then that person
particularly
more or less
within their own
through.
party,
right?
Yeah, particularly within their own party. Recall Bush 43 nominated Harriet Miers, okay, to replace Justice David Souter.
That didn't go so well.
Well, Harriet Miers was well liked by the Democrats in the Senate, but not the Republicans.
Oops.
So he withdrew her nomination, right? Now, if the Senate is controlled by the opposition party, then it gets really difficult. Okay, it gets extremely difficult.
Obama's last year in office.
There was a
vacancy.
Well, his last 6 years in office, okay, the Republicans made it very clear that a lot of his judicial nominations, including his nomination of Merrick Garland to replace Justice Scalia, who died in office, okay, wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to hold hearings. They weren't going to take a vote.
But they don't have a filibuster anymore, right? They can't. They can't just talk it out. Okay,
so here's the other intervening variable, if you will. Okay, and that is, if the Senate is controlled by the same party as that of the president, the opposition party in the Senate has no effective way to stop the confirmation. Why? Because the United States Senate got rid of the filibuster. Okay, and for viewers and listeners who don't know what the filibuster is, the Senate, okay, allows for unlimited debate unless the vote is taken to close debate. So this unlimited debate is known as filibustering, right? The Senate got rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations the first year of the Trump administration. So when Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch to replace Scalia, the Senate was controlled by the Republican Party, and kind of sort of tit for tat. Okay, the Republicans were like, hey, the Democrats got rid of the filibuster for lower federal court nominations. We are now going to do it for Supreme Court nominations.
Uh,
So there is no effective way for the opposition party to stop a president from nominating a Supreme Court justice if the Senate is controlled by the same political party as the president. That's why elections matter in regards to the picking and confirmation of Supreme Court nominees. It's not just the president, okay? Because that's a perk. That's an authority
what one could argue, or a deep responsibility, but
responsibility. But
yes,
yeah,
perk, deep responsibility,
okay.
potato, potato.
Yeah, but I mean, it's an authority given to the president in the U.S. Constitution,
Right.
but it's a shared authority. But the
Right.
extent,
So it's kinda an authority.
yeah, but the extent to which it is actually shared will depend on which political party is in the majority in the Senate. Okay. And
Okay.
that and that's why viewers, okay,
So
it's
the
not only
whole ticket matters. The whole ticket
well,
matters, right?
yes,
Not just the president, but your senators, your
yes.
Congress people, all of that matters,
Mm-hmm.
because if each one's going to pull a slightly different lever in this to
And
have an effect.
it even matters to the extent to which if the Senate is evenly divided, then the vice president casts the tie-breaking vote.
Right.
And that was important the first 2 years of the Biden administration when the Senate was effectively divided. Okay. So again, okay, it's not only the presidential election that matters, it's also Senate elections matter in regards to the nomination and confirmation of Supreme Court justices.
Okay, well, thanks for giving me something else to worry about, Augie.
Sure, Dia. No problem.